Okay, we are going to start with the joint meeting. We're live again. So item 1 is the approval of the June 28, 2021 Joint Community Development Finance Meeting Minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, seconded by Mrs. Davis. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 2 is the matter of the Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Annual Action Plan Substantial Agreement. This is a public hearing and a notice of a public hearing. A public hearing will be held on Monday, July 26, 2021 at 6 p.m. at Elyria City Council Chambers, 131 Court Street, Elyria, Ohio, 44035, to obtain the views of citizens concerning the approval of a substantial amendment to the City of Elyria's Community Development Block Grant Program and Consolidated Action Plan. The proposed amendment will be available for public viewing at the City of Elyria Community Development Office, Suite 302, Elyria, Ohio, 44035, or electronic version to be available on the City of Elyria's website. In a public hearing, I'm asking for, are there any proponents? Mona.
Yes, through you. This is for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program in order to transfer any current or future program income as we close out of that grant. We currently have 6 properties that the city still owns through that program. They're all vacant lots. The price is set for $500 apiece, so that would be a total of $3,000. For future program income within the next 10 years. And so HUD has required us to come up with a plan for what we would do with that money as we no longer have this grant. It does have to stay in housing because the NSP program was a housing grant. And actually it has to go to the CDBG grant. It can't go to a different grant. And so we thought the most logical pot that would go into would be for housing rehab. We did have a comment period for 30 days. We haven't received any comments from the public. And so this is our public hearing. We're asking also for a vote this evening as well. And we have sent the proposed changes to HUD, and they did accept this as an acceptable plan for the money.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Seeing none, this public hearing has been held. I'll read the committee report. The Community Development Block Grant CDBG Consolidated Annual Action Plan Substantial Agreement. This is an ordinance authorizing the said substantial amendment to transfer current and future NSP funds to CDBG housing rehab activity and to transfer the current balance of $1,500 to the current CDBG housing rehab activity. Could I get a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Sarah, seconded by Mrs. Mitchell. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Can I get a motion from Finance?
So moved, Mr.
Moved
Chair.
by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Todd. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and to the department. Thank you. Okay, item 3 is the matter of a request for an exception to the city's subordination policy for CD rehabilitation loans. Director Scott.
Thank you. Lizzie Taylor of 415 Michigan Avenue is requesting an exception to the city's subordination policy so that she can proceed with refinancing of her existing home mortgage. Her husband passed away in 2019, and she's seeking refinancing to lower her mortgage payment. She is not taking any money out at closing. The city's policy states that no subordinations will be granted where the total of all mortgages and liens against the property would exceed 90% of the appraised value. In this specific case, the total liens on the property total 95%. She is current on her property taxes. Community Development recommends approving the waiver.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Could you please tell us what year she took the loan?
She applied for the program in 2019, so she was going through the process. So the mortgage documents were signed, I believe, late 2019, early 2020. Here, I can double check that here. Yes, it was in spring of 2020.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, concerns? Okay. If not, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of a request for the exception to the city subordination policy for the community development rehab loans. This is an ordinance authorizing the request of an exception to the subordination policy for Lizzie Taylor of 415 Michigan Avenue so she may proceed with the refinancing of her existing home mortgage. Could I get a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell and seconded by Mr. Sarah.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Can I get a motion from Finance?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Mr. Tolet. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Okay, one more item for the Community Development and Finance tonight is the matter of professional services contract with Joel Ratner Community Partnership, LLC, for consulting services for the Elyria Community Development Corporation. Director Calvert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in October of last year, the city received a grant from the Nord Family Foundation, which was to be used towards the development of a Community Development Corporation. A portion of those funds were used to hire a consultant to assist with that effort. That consultant was Mr. Joel Ratner. With Mr. Ratner's guidance and expertise, a lot has been accomplished since we received that grant. A steering committee was formed and has met 5 times. A name, mission, and vision have been selected for the organization. Several working committees have been formed. Governance, an events committee, downtown development, and housing are all subcommittees of that group. And we've seen some events like Third Thursday. So if you've been there, that it has been a really great event, which has activated downtown and created a lot of pride for the community, and that is directly tied to the efforts of the Community Development Corporation. That said, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to file papers to officially recognize the organization as a 501c3. That is underway. There needs to be a board of directors established with an initial meeting of that board of directors to be convened in early fall. The continuation and planning of events to continue that activation for downtown, as well as other areas of the city. Beautification and real estate development projects. So we have spoken quite a bit in the past about some of the gaps that are in our building stock and some of the sophisticated capital stacks that need to be pulled together to make those efforts work. So this is one place where the CDC can really play a role in that. Housing initiative, so there is a housing subcommittee that was pulled together to take a look and see what the housing needs throughout the entire city are and where the CDC could play a role in that. And then staffing. Of course, the CDC will have to be staffed with employees to continue the efforts. So there needs to be a staffing plan, a fundraising plan put in place to make sure all of that happens. So in light of that, and the critical point in the development of the CDC where we find ourselves, and the amount of work that it's going to take to continue this effort, we are requesting council to authorize an extension of Mr. Ratner's contract for the next 6 months at a rate not to exceed $36,000. So that is what our request is for tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Oswald.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I think if I understand this correct, the reason that we were trying to get the CDC started, and this was going to be a portion of his job, and he's had this time since he's started, it's a matter of filling out some paperwork, sending it in, and it's done deal, and then it can be incorporated and it's all finished. That hasn't been done. How long are we going to get strong for another 6 months until this has happened? The board of directors hasn't been set up. I know it's a process going out and trying to get good people to sit on the board. But I see all these things in what he's talking about and he plans on doing, and for the last 6 months, I don't see anything of those accomplished. The CDC was supposed to be set up. We're running third Thursday off of somebody else's. Now, that shouldn't be. That CDC was supposed to be set up, from what I understand. If I'm wrong, tell me, but I don't like the idea right now. Here's 6 months money, and we're still not to this point. Who's watching over you to make sure this stuff is taken care of or done, So that's what I worry about. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. So, yeah, you are wrong on that. I'll clarify on what I mean by that. So a part of how we approached this was, we could have just filled out a document, signed off a CDC, and had one on paper. But what we tried to do is a true community engagement process that Joel has been helping facilitate, where we've engaged people who haven't necessarily been at the table. And the other piece that we decided we would do as well is be active and not just sit in a room doing planning activities. So a part of the reason you have the third Thursday there is because this group, through Joe's leadership, decided we didn't want to just fill out paperwork. We wanted to do things active at the same time as working on developing the infrastructure. There's been two threads going. One being developing the organization from the bylaws and board development, and then the other has been really active in doing projects. And so the point that you made around this being done through another organization, the other organization is just a fiscal body to hold resources, and we would need to have that anyway because the timeline to get approval for the 501c3 status, we wouldn't have been able to get sponsors for the third Thursday event because we wouldn't have had the 501c3 status in that time period. So we've been very intentional about how this thing is rolled out. We think it's on schedule for how we thought. We thought it would take at least a year. Sometimes this stuff takes longer than a year. If you look at Main Street, Lorraine, and Lorraine, when they were rebuilding that, it took a long time, a lot of meetings, and a lot of time to build that organization. But I think they're proud of the work they've done there and what's happened. I think we wanted to be strategic with this as well and not rush to fill out paperwork at the expense of not being thoughtful about who was involved and engaged. So, thank you, Chair.
Water Director Deary.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I agree in part with you, Mayor. I think the activities, Third Thursday has been a great, attractor for the community, but I respectfully disagree. I've been in a meeting with the administration, also with the Administrative Legal Counsel, and we did express concerns for why the incorporation documentation had not been done To this date, I am not aware that that paperwork has been done, and we did ask what the strategy was for not getting the ball rolling on the 501c3. Why that ball had not been started rolling, because the IRS is notorious for not being the most efficient government agency. So I do think that it's rather unfair to merely state that it's wrong of a council member to ask, why that hasn't been done, and because frankly I had that same question, and I appreciate that maybe Mr. Ratner as a consultant has a different game plan and his experience and expertise. He's got a game plan that is different than what mine would be, or what Attorney Taylor's would be, or people on members of the council. But I do think that's a fair question of if he was hired to be a consultant for the development of the Elyria Community Development Corporation, and I believe that as of this date we still do not have a corporation, in fact.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. Let me clarify. When I said wrong, I wasn't referring to wrong, because you were in the meeting with me. I shared the same concern. We all share why hasn't this part, but I think there's a difference between the paperwork being filled out and developing a strong organization. Because we could literally spend the time in this meeting and fill the paperwork out and send it off. That doesn't give you a strong CDC. So, our plan for the paperwork side of the organization is we actually have a agreement, and Dawn can speak to this already with McDonald Hopkins, and we're going to utilize them to do the paperwork. But again, just filling out that paperwork doesn't give you a strong organization, but that will still happen through McDonald Hopkins on the paperwork side. But again, I just kind of want to make sure I'm clarifying the point of the wrong point was around, are we being strung along by Joel for months for this? And it's like, no, this is a part of how we've thought about, even if we had it on paper right now, it still wouldn't be incubated strong enough to be its own organization. Does that make sense? If they had the paperwork and gave it, it's in its infancy. If we want to see this thing grow, and I think it's right by the funders, Nord Family Foundation in particular, who's put $65,000 into this, to make sure the city does its part in incubating this thing so they can sustain, versus rushing it to get it out on the street, and then it might not be able to sustain itself. So, that's kind of the thought process into it.
Ms. Mitchell, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go right ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Callahan, through you. So what is the difference between the CIC and the CDC? What is the difference?
It's a great question, Councilwoman, through you, Chair. So the CIC, how it's been set up here at the city, it's really set up more as a land bank, but it can also be used as an economic development engine to do loans to small businesses. So really how we've used it at the city has been for properties, to be able to control the development of properties, and then also to provide loans that maybe a developer had challenges getting conventional lending. So those have been the two main things for the CIC. The CDC is, and the other thing is that our board is made up of myself, the law director, the finance director, a council person, and 2 community people. So it's really just an extension of us as a government body. The CDC will be a true community-run organization that's independent of the city, that partners with us, but is independent, and their focus is on this group in particular, is activating downtown, including events, assisting with historic redevelopment. So can't speak about what we just talked about, but there's other projects that they could assist with downtown that this group could be a part of, as well as they've also looked at placemaking like murals and activating other spaces downtown. So this is more of a community-based group that's focused on community development, and the CIC is really just the third arm shell of the city that allows us to do land bank and control properties, as well as do some of the more high-risk loans. So, but that's a great question.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just follow up. So CIC is an extension of the city, CDC, CIC is an extension of the city, CDC is more community-based. So what exactly are we paying this gentleman for?
Yeah, so we got a grant from Nord Family Foundation last year for $65,000, and we made some commitments in that to establish this organization. So part of what he's been doing is meeting with folks, gathering folks, to talk about the idea, because we've had we need to re-educate people on the purpose of this. So we've spent time educating the community about this. And then we've set up several committees to kind of address the governance side of things, to address the event side of things, and ultimately to incubate this organization with hopes that, you know, a year from now, they have their own staff, you know, they have their own board, and they'll be a partner with the city, but they'll be their own entity. That's the goal, at least for a year from now, that they would have a fully staffed organization.
Mr. Chair, I promise, last question. Again, what are we paying him for? 60,000,
Yeah.
36,000?
So he's been facilitating these dialogues. He's been bringing his expertise, you know, to these building owners. You know, he's been, you know, it's so hard because he just has an executive, but he's been in these conversations.
Okay.
It's not like, you know, he's been in these conversations, he's been in conversations with other downtown building owners, to bring his expertise around community development and historic redevelopment. But yeah, and I think I've shared this with you all before. Anytime we hire a consultant or a contractor or an employee, we're holding people's feet to the fire. If it's not delivering, we always have a way to opt out and say, hey, this ain't working, it's not getting the value. And we've been intentional about consistently going to the community group and asking, is this guy providing value to you all? You know, and I'll be straight with you. I have those conversations. Is this valuable to you, or could you be doing this without him? And they've expressly said, yes, this is helpful having him. His leadership, his expertise is helping us get there, and that's what's been the selling point for me.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Law Director Deary.
Thank you. Just a legal point of order, and as it was corrected and brought to my attention by my brother in the law, Attorney Taylor, because as most of you know, we are involved in various litigation. The CIC is its own standalone corporation. It is not part of the government municipality of the city of Elyria. Yes, there are members of the city government that are voting members. That is how it was set up by the law firm that it created its bylaws, but it is its own independent corporation under the laws of the state of Ohio. So for the record, and for any members of the media that are out in the audience, it is its own separate entity. It can be sued independently. It has been sued independently. And it is not, it's not an arm of the city of Elyria. So just, that's my little Cliff Notes legal lesson tonight. Just for what's worth, and not that we've gotten there yet, but just so I understand it for drafting legislation, so this would be a 6-month extension, $36,000. I wanted to make sure I heard that right. And if money's not been appropriated, my office would need to know where, what bucket it's coming out of. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was one of, Chairman Callahan, that was one of my questions, is where's the money coming from? But ultimately, so just so I could recap it, Mayor Whitfield, so the grant from NORD was $65,000. What was his initial contract?
I can answer that. The
Ms. Calvert.
original contract was just under $49,000.
So his original contract for 1 year was for 6 months?
Correct.
For 6 months, and now we're coming back here for 6 months for $36,000. In saying that, I had spoke with the mayor prior to the meeting and had my reservations about, you know, this appointment and what's the efforts that I've put in. And then Mr. Oswald had kind of weighed in on, you know, why this had taken long. Now the mayor's kind of weighed in on why the preparation to get to where it's at today. So, I don't know, it's just, it's hard when we, you know, we're trying to develop and make decisions here for our community and grow it in the way that we're trying to do it. And but at the same time, we got to make sure that people are being held accountable to what's being developed and done. And if we're not getting the results that we want, then we need to make these decisions. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. It looks like Mr. Plesky has his hand up.
Through you to Law Director Deary. So the original contract, the grant, we had received it in the general fund, so we've been paying the original contract out of the general fund, miscellaneous, general government department, operating and maintenance account. So we'll just continue to pay for it out of that account.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plesky. Mrs. Mitchell?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So if my calculations are correct, we're paying this gentleman $85,000 for the year.
Yes, yeah. If we complete this portion of his contract, yes, at least, 85,000, the contract would be. And keep in mind, we have a lot of, but, yeah.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so he's bringing the group together, providing them guidance, giving them directions. We've got third Thursdays, which is awesome. I really enjoy third Thursday, but not $85,000 worth.
And through you, Chair, 65,000 of it isn't our money, and they knew that we would be paying a consultant, and this consultant in particular, for the grant.
And they were okay with that?
Yes, because they understand this guy has done redevelopment around the country.
Okay.
We know that though. We know that as a council. We pay for expertise.
Sure.
We pay for those attorneys to come in here, $150 an hour, $200 an hour, $1,000, because we value their expertise. This is no different than that, and it's actually much lesser than that, to get the sort of expertise he brings to the city. If we're going to develop, we got to have it, people with strong expertise. So I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary.
Last question, I promise. Again. So I think it would be helpful to all of the council members if every now and then we could hear from the consultants. Maybe show up and we'll do an executive session if there's something with real estate that we can't have, you know what I mean? Put out into the public sphere. But maybe it would be helpful and a better understanding for us. You're asking us to approve dollar amounts, and we're trying to be good stewards with the money. Maybe it would be helpful to have this young man, Joel, come before us and just tell us what he's doing, what's going on.
Yes, ma'am. And through you, Council President, we will have Joel come and present to you all, and that is the plan.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Davis?
Through you, Chair. So the $65,000 was granted to us from the North family, and so that looks like it leaves $20,000. So, Mr. Ted Plesky, could you tell me if this $20,000 is available in our general fund, since COVID has caused so much down in our community? Is this money available?
Yes, if you recall, because of the CARES Act money, a lot of the general fund expenditures that would have normally come out of the general fund were averted to the CARES Act fund last year. So we started 2021 with the healthiest cash balance in the general fund that I believe that I've seen in my 30-some years. And, I anticipated that income tax revenues would be down the first part of this year, which they were, but they're starting to come back a little bit. So I'm confident there's $20,000 in the general fund to spend on it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Oswald?
Okay, so one last thing. When I go to build a house, I think to be a good contractor, I have to get all my licensing and everything set up so I can go and I can build a house for you, and so I can go to the building department. I've got that. I don't use somebody else's license. Okay, so that's what I feel like's happening, that CDC should have been set up. I know you're just saying it's paperwork and you want to get everything done, but I'm getting everything done to build a house, and the person says, well, what do you mean? You want to build a house? Me to, have you build this house and you don't have your license? Why would I go with you? You're not even set up. And that's what I feel like we should have been set up. Now, I know that's two different opinions, but that's why I'm having a hard time wrap my mind around why this wasn't taken care of and set up. And so it's just two different views, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, and through you, Council President, the last comment I'll make on that point is, again, we were trying to be as intentional as possible about building the organization, not just filing the paperwork, because it's neither here nor there in terms of you can have the paperwork, all that stuff on a piece of paper. You still got to build the board. You still got to build community consensus. You still got to build a shared vision. You still got to build a budget. You still got to build a proposal. You still got to build a strategic plan. All that stuff still needs to happen, whether you file that paperwork or not. Then the other piece I'll share is that if we would have waited we would not have done the third Thursdays, which I think the city has enjoyed, I think the city needed. If we would have not used another entity, we wouldn't have been able to pull that off because we used that other entity as a fiscal sponsor to be able to get sponsorship dollars to do the event. So that was kind of the trade-off.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Comments? Okay. Well, seeing none, I will read the committee report. We have considered the matter of a request for a professional service contract with Joel Radner, Community Partnership LLC, as a consultant for the development of the Elyria Community Development Corporation. This would be an ordinance authorizing the extension and the addition of the professional service contract with Joel Ratner, Community Partnership LLC. This would be an extension of 6 months and an amount not to exceed $36,000. Could I get a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sarah, seconded by Mrs. Mitchell.
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
One nay.
Can I get a motion?
Carried.
Can I get a motion from Finance? So moved. Moved by Mr. Tolet. Second by Mr. Baird. I'll have another point of discussion before we take the vote. Again, I was, dubious about moving forward with this just because of where it's at and more discussion that's happened. But based on my comments with Ms. Calvert, that his role here, where we're at midstream with this, I think it's worth giving him the 6 months. I'm not, but I think we need to see it through a little bit and hold him a little bit more accountable in these last 6 months to make sure this is, we need to be where we need to be at in a point moving forward. So if there's nothing more discussion, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Okay, at this time, I see no further business for community development. I accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jesse. Question on the motion? Question. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned for community development. Thank you.
All right, we're going to continue on with finance. Can I get approval of the finance meeting minutes for June 28th, 2021? Moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Mr. Jesse. Is there any further discussions?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 2, we've considered the matter of the enact with delinquent public utility accounts, a resolution authorizing said delinquent accounts to be certified to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached list. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved, Mr.
Moved by
Chair.
Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Baird. This is standard procedure submitted by Ms. Connor that we just submitted over there. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 3, we've considered the matter of the, I'm going to hope I pronounce this, Evolus XL solar-powered radar speed signs. In ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement for the purchase of 10 28 by 28 radar speed signs. Cost is $5,490 for 2 signs, and a total cost of $27,495 for 10 signs. Funds to be paid from, has that been determined at this particular time? Mr. Pileski?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in tonight's appropriation changes, we're going to recommend that we appropriate it in the 2016.50% income tax fund and in the police department operating and maintenance account.
There's a total of cost of $39,495. Of that, the pole apparatus is $12,000. Based on the recommendation of the finance director, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tolet.
Second.
Second by,
Whenever the discussion point, I have a question.
second by Mr., both Ms. Davis and Mr. Jesse. Is there any discussion? Mayor Whitfield?
Yeah, so, I got somewhat up to speed on this over the past week, but really would like to know, what is the hope and goal of purchasing these? I know, we're looking at $40K for these as well, and just looking to, I know we wanted, what is the data showing around the awareness, and what are we hoping to get out of making these purchases? That's the hope.
This referral is made by Mr. Jesse, so Mr. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Yeah, I know we all get calls about speeding on various streets in our ward. We get requests for police to set up radar patrols. Get a lot of requests for University Avenue, a lot of requests. Contacted Captain Hammonds, asked him about possibly putting some patrol in. I know it's very challenging for them, particularly with all the locations in the city. He told me that they're getting very, very positive results from the 4 portable radar signs that are put up throughout the city. And of course, 4 for the entire city is not that many. And he said his recommendation was to get more signs. So I talked to the chief, and the chief said, well, we can get the permanent ones that are solar powered, because another challenge is the engineering department has to go out and change the batteries, and that takes time. I had discussions with Mr. Schneider about that, and so that seemed like a very, very logical solution, is to get solar powered and to have them permanently located in the places throughout the city that have the greatest demand and the greatest speeding. Of course, we know from our portable signs, it gives us the data to tell us how many people are speeding and what times of day they're speeding. The chief even, I said, well, how many would you recommend that we get? And he goes, if we could get 10 and we could put them in 5 locations going both directions, even though I did find out that those signs take data from the other direction, the direction that you're not seeing the reading. But we all know that, I know for me, I tend to go faster than I should. And when I see one of those, it's a friendly reminder and I slow down. And lots of people are in that category. They just kind of don't realize they're going over the speed limit, and that's a reminder. And as silly as it is, you see that little thank you, and it's a positive reinforcement from a machine, but it actually kind of makes you feel better, like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. We all know there's going to be people that are going to totally disregard those, but based on the recommendation of Captain Hammonds, he said we're getting very, very, very positive results. So to me, it's a no-brainer. We have the money to do it, and we just have to decide exactly where our 5 locations are. And the chief gave me 5 possible locations. I said, where would you think the hot spots are in the city? But obviously, once we get them, we can, discuss that and see if they're are some other locations. So, I strongly recommend we pass this.
Very good. Anybody else in regards to, in saying that, I don't know, Mr. Jesse get any information from other surrounding communities, or has that just been through what Chief Whiteley had said? Is history with other communities that's become,
Well, it was, like I said, it started with a conversation with Captain Hammonds asking him about putting radar patrol, and that's when he said, these are really making a difference, and we're hearing a lot of positive feedback from citizens on those 4 portable signs.
All right, and then that would be with Mr. Schneider from engineering, I guess, as those locations as far as where that's determined, the protective barriers, I guess, and things like that. Is that got to be, how far off do they have to be off the roadway, and all that will be determined, I'm guessing?
Right, those are details that obviously we would make sure we look into.
And this would be taken out of the issue 6. Okay.
Yeah,
Is there any further?
Yeah, through you, Council President. The only piece that I just wanted to, and thank you for that too, that helped provide some context in terms of where that came from. In terms of, we identify the problem of speeding throughout the city in various blocks, and just trying to think of, what would the police really, we think it's important for them to help determine how to solve these problems. So, if this money could be used to hire another officer to be on patrol, that would be a good solution. But what I'm hearing, some of the thought process around just getting that data, I think is important to have that data so we know where people need to patrol and when they need to patrol, when those hot spots are. But ultimately, if that data tells us people are speeding down the street, we're going to need to put a police officer there to enforce and put the ticket there. So
Sure.
The data is going to be one part of it, but actually solving the problem, I'm hopeful that thank you will do enough to slow some folks down. But ultimately, if we see the data saying folks are speeding, we're going to need to put an officer there to address it.
Very good. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to comment on these signs. I live in a hotspot area. Even though they stopped the turning on one to my left off of Bell onto West River, I tell you, they speed up so bad on my street. And so I had the signs installed. And they can only stay for a certain while because we don't have that many. But to piggyback on what he's saying, the sign went blank. And I was so happy to find out that even though it wasn't lighting up, that it was still recording those people speeding down the street. And I think I got signs on my street, speeding down Bell. And they speeding just as bad when they see my sign. I think they speed up.
Yep.
And it's a terrible curve, and I'm looking for the day when they wipe out somebody's house in that curve. It's coming.
Yep.
So I'm looking for these signs to be put up somewhere to let them know off of West River that this is being recorded, so maybe they can stop. I don't know what the problem is. It's 25 on the street, and they're doing 45 and 50.
Yep. Through you, Council President. Yeah, so thank you, Councilwoman Davis. That Bell Avenue, again, is one of those streets where people see the sign and actually speed up faster. And so the solution I've talked to the engineer about and talked to the police about was, speed bumps to try to detract from that. But again, I just think that we need to this is a problem we really need to figure out. And I don't think this is the solution to it, but it does give us some data about the problem.
Yeah. Mr. Jesse?
Yeah, I certainly agree we can use more officers, and I think we're actively trying to recruit and hire more officers. But I know with this, I went to the experts, the Captain Hammonds and the chief, and they both said these would help. So I believe they'll help.
Yeah. I would agree. It's just one more step that we can do to kind of enforce the safety and realization of what's out there that we need to do. So I think the input, Ms. Davis, that you had, Mr. Jesse and everybody else here, eventually getting that back to Captain Hammonds and Chief Whiteley, ultimately where these locations go, and working with Engineer Schneider to make sure everything's in line there. So is there any further discussion? Questions be called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 4, we've considered the matter of pedestrian sidewalk on the Fuller Road Bridge, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for and award a contract for the said project on Fuller Road. Estimated cost is $175,000. The monies have not been appropriated into the 21 budget. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Tolet. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fuller Road has its challenges in regards to pedestrian traffic. South side of the road has sidewalks. The north side is lacking in most areas. One area that's particularly that's lacking is, which you might not even know it's out there, there's a large ditch out there just east of Scott Street, or Scott Court. And the land actually adjacent to this part of the road is actually owned by the city of Elyria. So it is our property, and it currently does not have sidewalks. There's the Gordon Manor apartments that are right next to this ditch, and we've received complaints in the past as far as trying to traverse, because in order to cross the ditch, they have to actually cross the road first, and traffic over there has picked up over the years, and therefore some people don't feel it's safe, and have asked to have sidewalk installed across that ditch on the north side of the road, which, as I said, is property owned by the city. We're looking to install a pedestrian bridge across there. The bridge would be 10 foot wide to accommodate in the future a possible bike route. As you know, the South Park currently has bike routes installed inside the park itself. It's just a matter of time before we bring them out into the neighboring community, and we figured it would be a good location to put a bike route, as it's right next to the park. So we were accommodating that and just forward thinking. The overall price is $175,000. That does include the engineering cost to design the project, so that's all included in there. And it wasn't in our budget this year, but it's my understanding that we may have some Issue 6 funds that are still available that are unappropriated that we would like to utilize.
Engineer Shaw, did you say the engineering was included in this?
The engineering is included in the 175 that was requested, yes.
Finance Director Plesky?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I thought it was 125.
75.
175.
So the estimated cost of this pedestrian bridge is 175?
That includes the engineering portion as well, which is around just over $30,000. So it's about $145,000 for the bridge itself.
So what we did is we appropriated in tonight's appropriation changes, we bumped up the 2016.50% income tax fund street repair department capital outlay by $125,000. So we need to add that, bring that to 175.
Yes, please.
So that'll be, instead of 125 on that exhibit, it'll be 175,000.
Any further questions for Engineer Schneider? More comments on the Fuller Road? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, only a comment. And then over in that section, sometimes, especially with the Gordon Manor apartments, the people, like you say, have always worried about crossing Fuller Road. And so another plus to this bridge is that when the football game starts back up in full force, they use those side streets leading up to the stadium. So to have that bridge going across there will be a plus, because the people can park on further down past Gordon Manor in the parking lots down there, and they walk to the stadium. So thank you for this opportunity to have this done.
Mr. Tolet?
Through you, this is a safety issue as well, and this is something that needs to be done, and I wholeheartedly support this, just because someone's going to get hurt.
Is there any further discussion? Question be called. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 5. We've considered the matter of the 2021-2022 Victims of Crime Act grant and the State Victims Assistance Act grant, in order to authorize the law director to submit applications for the VOCA and the SVAA grants and accept, if offered, applications to be submitted to the Ohio Attorney General's office. Said grants are to be used for advocate salaries, training, and equipment. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Mr. Tolet. Law Director Deering.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These two grants are applications that are submitted each year. When granted, these funds are applied and make up a significant portion of our two victim witness advocates' salaries, and also the equipment that they use on City of Elyria cases over at the Elyria Municipal Court. So I thank you for your consideration.
Yep, and there's a history with this that, this is our part of the law director's advocacy of this, so I think it's, money well earned and spent for this opportunity. So is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 6. We've considered the matter of the 2021 permanent appropriations in ordinance authorizing to amend the 2021 permanent appropriations ordinance number 2021-50 per the attached. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. There are 4 this evening in the Law Enforcement Trust Fund and Department, an additional $48,000 for patrol rifles for the police department. In the Elyria Muni Recovery Court Fund and Department, an increase of $17,000 in salary and wages and $3,000 in benefits and pension for, this is $20,000 in additional grant money that they've received. And then the last 2 we spoke about earlier, in the 2016 0.50% income tax fund, in the police department operating and maintenance account, we would be adding the additional $39,495 for the speed limit warning signs. And then the street repair capital outlay, the exhibit that I initially passed out has the 125, but I'd like to amend that for the 175,000 for the pedestrian bridge on Fuller Road.
Mr. Baird.
Yes, that's not through you, Chairman. That's a typo. Sorry about that.
We'll let it slide this time, John.
Thanks for reading it, though, Jack.
Is there any further discussion in regards to what's being presented in front of us tonight? Questions been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. If there's nothing more to come before this committee, I entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Mr. Baird, second by Mr. Tolet. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you.